Let's begin. Picture a single city block. One block. 133rd Street between Lenox Avenue and 7th Avenue in Upper Manhattan. It's August 1926. Now fill that block with the most astonishing concentration of human talent ever assembled in one place in American history. Langston Hughes is writing poems 3 buildings down from where you're standing. Duke Ellington is warming up his orchestra around the corner. Zora Neale Hurston is taking notes on everything you say. Josephine Baker came through last month. Marcus Garvey just spoke on the corner. And underneath every window on every floor of every building on this block, someone is playing music so new, so alive, so completely unlike anything the world has ever heard that they don't even have a proper name for it yet. They'll call it jazz. But right now, in August of 1926, they just call it Saturday night. That's Harlem, not the Harlem of history books and documentary footage. Not the Harlem of grainy photographs and museum exhibits. We're going inside it tonight. One day, one life, one person. Everything they would have heard, tasted, feared, and felt alive by. I make these sleep stories, and honestly, I still can't tell if you're people who genuinely drift off to the sound of historical detail, or if you're just insomniacs who've run out of other options. Either way, I'm glad you're here. Get comfortable, pull the blanket up, turn the light off. Here we go. Your eyes open to darkness, not the darkness of a quiet room, the darkness of a building that never fully sleeps. Even at 5 in the morning, even with the sky still black outside the single window above the fire escape, you can hear 133rd Street below. Distant laughter. A piano line drifting up from somewhere. The clang of a milk cart making its rounds on Lenox Avenue. The iron wheels ringing against the cobblestones like a slow, lazy bell. Then the smells hit you. Hair oil first. Your own and everyone else's in the room. 3 men sleep in this room, and the mingling of pomade and sweat and August heat is thick enough to taste. Then cigarette smoke, baked into the plaster after years of tenants who all smoked in bed. Then something frying. Someone downstairs is already awake, already at the stove. The smell of fatback in a cast iron pan drifts up through the floorboards, and your stomach answers immediately. Underneath all of it, the street. The particular smell of Harlem in summer. Garbage ripening in the heat. Rain from last night still steaming off the pavement. Horse manure from the delivery wagons mixed with the sharp chemical tang of the laundry operation 3 doors down that runs 6 days a week and whose steam pipes breathe out through a grate in the sidewalk. And somewhere, improbably, honeysuckle. Someone on this block grows honeysuckle in a window box, and every now and then, when the wind shifts, you can smell it above everything else. Welcome to 271 West 133rd Street, Harlem, Manhattan. August 1926. You're lying on a narrow cot near the window. The mattress is thin cotton, not straw like the old-timers had, but not much better. The springs creak when you breathe too deeply. Across the room, your roommate Clarence is snoring, with the commitment of a man who worked a double shift last night. Against the far wall, on a cot shoved so close to the radiator that the paint is blistered behind it. Your cousin Raymond is completely motionless in the heavy, boneless sleep of the deeply exhausted. Raymond works the overnight at the Hotel Teresa up on 7th Avenue. Doorman. 14 hours on his feet last night. 7 in the evening until 9 this morning, smiling at white guests from downtown who come uptown to watch Negro performers and never quite look the man holding the door in the eye. He'll sleep until 2 in the afternoon. He's earned it. You've been in Harlem for 11 months. You came up from Greenwood, Mississippi on a Thursday in September. Left before dawn, didn't say goodbye to half the people you meant to say goodbye to. Sat in the coloured car of the Illinois Central Railroad for 22 hours, watching the South dissolve behind you through a smudged window. Red clay roads, pine forests, cotton fields, then Tennessee, then Kentucky, then Ohio, and you were north, though nobody told your body that. You were still tense, still watching, still doing the calculations you'd been doing your whole life about which spaces were safe and which weren't. By the time the train pulled into Penn Station and you walked out into the chaos of 8th Avenue with one suitcase and $43 and the address of a cousin you'd met once at a funeral, you understood something. New York doesn't care where you're from, not in the way Mississippi cared. New York is too busy to hate you with the focused, organized malice of home. It will grind you down in a dozen other ways you're still discovering, but it won't do the other thing. That's not nothing. That might be everything. Greenwood gave you the music. New York is going to show you what to do with it. You sit up. The cop protests. Clarence doesn't stir. Raymond breathes. Your trumpet is on the floor next to the cot, wrapped in a cloth you cut from an old shirt. You check it first thing every morning the way other men check their wallets. The trumpet came up on the train with you. It's a King Super 20. Manufactured in 1922 by the H.N. White Company in Cleveland, Ohio. Cost you $67 new, which was more money than you'd ever spent on a single object, and more than your father earned in 2 months picking cotton. You paid for it over 14 months working at a sawmill. Every blister, every splinter, every burned hand is in that trumpet. You pick it up, hold it. Don't play it. Not at 5 in the morning with Clarence sleeping 6 feet away, but you hold it the way some men hold a Bible. The bathroom is shared. 4 apartments on this floor. 1 bathroom at the end of the hall. You know the schedule without thinking about it anymore. Mrs. Washington next door goes in at 5:15 on the dot, comes out at 5:30. Old Mr. Beaumont across the hall doesn't rise until 7. The couple in the corner apartment, the Johnsons, take turns. You have a window from 5:30 to 5:45 if you move fast. You move fast. The bathroom has a clawfoot tub with a crack along one side that's been there since before you arrived. The tile is clean. Mrs. Drummond, who owns the building, is fanatical about clean tiles, but the grout is the colour of old tea. There's one small mirror above the basin, its silver backing peeling at the corners, so your reflection has dark holes in it, like you're a photograph left in the rain. Cold water. The hot water in this building comes on reliably about twice a week. You've stopped keeping track of which days. You splash your face, wet a cloth, do what you can. Look at yourself in the peeling mirror. You're 23 years old. You're 5'10" and 160 pounds. And the last 11 months have made you leaner. Not from hunger exactly, from the pace of it, from the way New York metabolizes everything. You look older than 23. Everyone does up here. The city runs a tab. Back in the room, you dress in the dark. Dark trousers, white shirt, the better of the two you own. Your good shoes, which are not very good shoes, but they're the better pair. You have a performance tonight at the Rhythm Club on 132nd Street, and you will spend the entire day in anticipation of it. That's how it goes. During the day you work, you eat, you move through the ordinary mechanics of survival, and underneath all of it, always, the music is waiting. Out the door, down 3 flights, out onto 133rd Street. It's 5:45 in the morning, and Harlem is not asleep. This is something nobody told you before you came. The magazines and the newspapers, the Negro papers mostly, the Chicago Defender and the Pittsburgh Courier, they talk about Harlem as a place that comes alive at night. And it does. God, it does. But what they don't tell you is that it never stops. It just changes registers. The nighttime crowd, the performers and gamblers and numbers runners and the white people from downtown looking for something they can't name. They thin out around 4 in the morning. But by 5, the morning shift is already moving. The maids and cooks and doormen and elevator operators, the people who keep the hotels and restaurants and apartment buildings of white Manhattan running, they're out before the sun. The street at 5:45 looks like a different neighborhood than the street at midnight, but it's the same people, just wearing different faces. You turn east toward Lenox Avenue. Harlem in 1926 occupies roughly the area from 110th Street at its southern border up to 155th Street in the north, bounded by the Harlem River on the east and St. Nicholas Avenue on the west. That's about 3 square miles. Inside those 3 square miles live somewhere between 165,000 and 200,000 Black Americans, the largest concentration of Black residents in any city in the United States. In 1910, this neighborhood was almost entirely white. Then the construction of the Lenox Avenue subway line in 1904 opened Harlem to developers who overbuilt, who needed tenants, who through a complicated chain of events and negotiation and courage ended up renting to Black families when no one else would take the apartments. And then the Great Migration began. From 1910 through the 1920s, hundreds of thousands of Black Americans left the South, left the sharecropping and the Jim Crow laws and the lynchings and the grinding daily humiliation of a system designed to keep them poor and afraid and dependent. They went north, to Chicago, to Detroit, to Philadelphia, to Pittsburgh, and to Harlem. They brought with them the music of the churches and the fields and the juke joints, the blues from Mississippi, gospel from Georgia, ragtime from New Orleans. And those forms, compressed by the energy of the city, by the collision of people from every corner of the Black South and the Caribbean and West Africa, began to mutate into something new, into jazz. You are part of the largest mass cultural movement in American history, though nobody is calling it that yet. Right now, you're just hungry and trying to figure out how you're going to eat before your shift starts. Lenox Avenue is the spine of Harlem, 205 blocks long from the tip of Manhattan to just south of Central Park. Lenox Avenue in the midsection of Harlem is where everything happens. Streetcar tracks run up the center. Elevated train tracks don't reach this far west, so the street has a relative openness to it, a wide sky. In the early morning, vendors are setting up along the sidewalk. A man with a cart selling sweet potatoes, baked in a small coal oven he's built into the cart itself, so the whole thing glows orange from the inside like a lantern. You buy a sweet potato for 3 cents. The vendor is a compact man named Wilson, who came up from Alabama 4 years ago and who has, by your calculation, the best pitch of any street vendor in Upper Manhattan. He doesn't just sell sweet potatoes. He delivers an experience. Hot sweet potato, he says, and his voice is low and musical, and he drags the word sweet out into 3 syllables. Like your mama made it, if your mama made it better. You've heard this line 40 times. It still makes you smile. You eat the potato walking north on Lenox, the heat of it warming your hands in the last coolness before the day's heat arrives. The coal smoke from Wilson's cart follows you half a block before the morning air swallows it. At 135th Street, you stop. The New York Public Library's 135th Street branch is already open. The librarian, a woman named Sadie Peterson Delaney, who has been here since 1920, opens the building at 6 in the morning 3 days a week. She says working people should be able to use the library before work. She's right. She's also quietly assembled the largest collection of Negro literature, art, and history in the world, right here in this building, the Arthur Schomburg Collection. manuscripts and rare books and photographs and African artifacts that Schomburg has been gathering for decades, donated to this library just this year, 1926. You've been inside this library 4 times. You don't read as well as you'd like to. School in Greenwood only went to the 8th grade and was in session half the year because cotton didn't pick itself. But you're getting better. Raymond loans you books. Clarence reads the newspaper out loud in the evenings, whether you want him to or not. You don't go in today. Not enough time. But you look at the building as you pass. This is also Harlem. Not just the clubs and the music. This too. You work at a pressing shop on 134th Street. 6 days a week, 8 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon. You press suits and dresses and shirts for Harlem residents who need them pressed, and the occasional garment dropped off by a white establishment from downtown whose regular presser is out sick or overwhelmed. The shop is owned by a man named Mr. Theodore Braxton, who is 61 years old, came up from Georgia in 1901, and has opinions about everything that he will share with you whether you ask or not. Braxton's shop is in a ground floor storefront, long and narrow, with 2 steam presses and an ironing board and a counter, and in the back, a small table where Braxton eats his lunch every day at exactly noon. The walls are covered in photographs. Joe Louis, Jack Johnson, Madam C.J. Walker, the first female self-made millionaire in America, whose hair products built an empire. Frederick Douglass, his portrait looking down from the highest spot on the wall with an expression of measured expectation, like he's waiting to see what you're going to do with everything he fought for. You come in at 8. Braxton is already there. He's always there. "Morning, son," he says, and he hands you the day's stack. 14 items for pressing. 3 suits, 2 dresses, 4 shirts, 2 pairs of trousers, a woman's coat, and something that turns out to be a tablecloth, which you will press without comment, because Braxton says customers are customers. The steam press is a Hoffman machine, manufactured in 1921, and it weighs 400 pounds and runs on steam piped from the building's boiler in the basement. When you pull the handle to close the press, it hisses and exhales a cloud of hot vapour that hangs in the air of the shop for a moment before the ceiling fan disperses it. In August, with the steam press running all day, the shop reaches temperatures that you've decided not to measure because knowing the number would not help you. You press. Braxton talks. He tells you about the March of 1917. 10,000 Negroes marching down Fifth Avenue in silence, protesting the East St. Louis massacre, in which white mobs murdered at least 100 black Americans and burned their neighborhood to the ground. He was in that march. He was 32 years old and wore his best suit and did not say one word for the entire 2 miles and still considers it the loudest thing he's ever been part of. He tells you about the 369th Infantry, the Harlem Hellfighters, black soldiers who fought in the trenches of France in the Great War, who served under French command because the American army wouldn't integrate, who earned the Croix de Guerre, France's highest military honour, who came home to a country that still made them use separate water fountains. He tells you about Marcus Garvey, who had his office right here on 135th Street until the federal government arrested him for mail fraud 2 years ago, in 1924, which Braxton believes was a politically motivated prosecution, but also believes was partly Garvey's own fault for the business decisions he made with the Black Star Line shipping company. And if you want to know the details of exactly what went wrong, he will explain it to you in exhaustive detail, which he then does. You press suits, you sweat, you listen. Braxton's histories are disorganized and passionate and full of contradictions, and they are the most valuable education you've received since arriving in New York. The man has been watching history happen from this block for 25 years. Around 10, a customer comes in for a pickup. His name is Mr. Henderson, a deacon at Abyssinian Baptist Church on 138th Street, which is the largest Protestant congregation in the United States, with more than 14,000 members, led since 1908 by Reverend Adam Clayton Powell Sr., whose sermons you've heard about but never attended because Sunday is the day you sleep. Mr. Henderson's suit is a charcoal grey three-piece, and it has been pressed to the edge of perfection. The lapels lie flat and exact. The creases in the trousers could cut glass. "Beautiful work," he says, running a hand along the lapel. "You do this?" "Yes, sir." He looks at you over his glasses. "You play that trumpet?" "I've heard you at the rhythm club." "Yes, sir." He nods once, slowly. "Keep playing," he says, "and keep pressing. Man needs both things in this life, his hands and his art." He pays Braxton $2.60 and leaves. Braxton doesn't say anything, but he puts the money in the drawer and nods once, the same slow nod as the deacon, and you think that nod might be the highest praise you've ever received. At noon, Braxton takes his lunch and you take yours. You brought a biscuit and a piece of cold chicken that Mrs. Drummond's cook left in the hall for the morning shift tenants. This is not a formal arrangement. It is simply the way certain buildings work, the informal economy of care that keeps Harlem running underneath the formal economy. You eat on the stoop. The street at noon is a different animal than the street at dawn. Women with shopping bags. A man selling ties from a case he carries. Two boys, maybe 12 years old, shooting marbles in the strip of packed earth between the sidewalk and the curb. A woman in a white nurse's uniform walking fast, probably from Harlem Hospital on Lenox Avenue at 136th Street, which opened in 1887, and by 1926 is one of the few hospitals in New York that will treat black patients, though the conditions inside are chronically underfunded, and the staff, almost entirely black by this point, performs miracles daily on a budget that should embarrass the city. A man stops in front of you, small, compact, with quick eyes and a notebook. "Play numbers?" he asks. You shake your head. "The numbers. You know what the numbers are. Everyone in Harlem knows the numbers. It's an illegal lottery. You pick a 3-digit number, you bet a penny or a nickel or a dollar, and if the number hits, you win 600 times your bet. The winning number is determined by the last 3 digits of the daily stock exchange clearinghouse totals, published in the evening papers, so nobody can fix it. The Numbers Run is the largest business enterprise in Harlem, bigger than all the clubs combined, bigger than the churches almost, the policy bankers, the men who run the operations, Casper Holstein, Madame Stephanie St. Clair, men whose names everyone knows. They employ hundreds of people as runners and collectors. They fund community organizations. They help families in trouble. They are, depending on who you ask, either parasites or pillars. Everybody plays, Clarence told you when you first arrived. Old women, children, reverends. Playing doesn't mean anything about your character. Not playing just means you don't understand mathematics. You still don't play. You send that money home to your mother in Greenwood instead. At 4 o'clock, Braxton locks the shop. "Good work today," he says, which is what he says every day regardless of whether the work was particularly good. It's less a compliment than a benediction. You're dismissed. Go be a person. You have 4 hours before you need to be at the rhythm club. On a day like this, you walk. Harlem repays walking. Every block has something. The block between 127th and 128th on 7th Avenue is where the street speakers gather in the evenings, men and women standing on ladders or boxes, orating to anyone who'll stop. Socialist organizers, Pan-Africanists, a man who believes the world is about to end and has detailed charts to prove it. A woman who can recite the entire Constitution from memory and who does so loudly on the corner every Sunday as a form of protest. Today you walk south, past the line of brownstones on 131st Street with their high stoops and iron railings, past a beauty parlour where 4 women sit under dryer hoods like queens under crowns, past a church that's holding what sounds like choir practice, the harmonies drifting out through the open windows in waves. At 125th Street, Harlem's main commercial strip, you stop. 125th Street is where Black Harlem and white business intersect, awkwardly and imperfectly. Most of the stores on 125th Street are owned by white merchants who live elsewhere, who take Harlem's money and deposit it in banks in other neighbourhoods. This is a source of ongoing and legitimate fury in the community. There will be, in a few years, a campaign, the Don't Buy Where You Can't Work movement, that will directly target these establishments. Right now, in 1926, the organising is in its early stages. But the frustration is already present, visible in the way men and women move through these stores. They buy what they need. They don't linger. They don't browse. They don't pretend this is comfortable. You buy a new set of valve oil for the trumpet. 40 cents. The clerk doesn't look at you while he makes change. You don't require him to. Outside, the afternoon sun is flattening the street into gold. You walk back north, through the heart of the neighbourhood, past the Tree of Hope on 7th Avenue. The Tree of Hope is a famous elm tree that stands on the centre mall of 7th Avenue at 131st Street. Musicians touch it for luck before auditions. Dancers touch it before performances. It has been touched by more hopeful hands than any tree in America. Bill Robinson, Bojangles, the tap dancer, is said to have carried a piece of it in his pocket for luck when he went downtown to audition for white producers. You touch it now, out of the habit of 11 months, out of superstition or faith or both. The bark is smooth in the places where thousands of hands have worn it down to silk. Back at the apartment at 5:30, Raymond is awake, sitting in the kitchen in his undershirt, drinking coffee the colour of motor oil. Big night? He asks. Could be. Manny said there'd be people there from the Columbia label. He says this is about his face. He doesn't make it dramatic. Raymond nods. He's heard this before. Every musician in Harlem has heard this version of this sentence before. There will be people from the label. There will be scouts. There will be someone important who has heard of you and wants to hear you in person. Sometimes it's true. More often, it isn't. And occasionally, improbably, something actually happens. A contract, a recording session, a name in a newspaper that reaches someone in Mississippi who tells your mother, and your mother holds the newspaper and cries. You don't let yourself want it too directly. Wanting things directly is how you get broken. You want the music. The music is real. The music is yours regardless of who's in the audience. You press your white shirt, using Braxton skills on your own domestic situation. The iron you borrow from Mrs. Drummond. You shine your shoes with a cloth and a tin of polish. You put on the trousers, the shirt, the jacket. You borrowed the jacket from Raymond 6 months ago and have not returned it, and Raymond has not asked for it back. It fits well enough. Charcoal grey, single-breasted, peak lapels in the style of 1924 or so, slightly out of fashion, but not embarrassingly so. In the right light, with the trumpet in your hand, you'll look like exactly what you are. A young musician from Mississippi who has figured out enough of New York to survive it. You look at yourself in the bathroom mirror. The silver is still peeling. The reflection still has holes in it. Good enough, you say to yourself. Clarence, who is awake now, eating cold fatback at the kitchen table, looks up when you come out of the bathroom. You look like money, he says. That's the point. The Rhythm Club at 168 West 132nd Street. You need to understand what this building is. On the outside, it's a brownstone, indistinguishable from 50 other brownstones on 50 other blocks. The door is unmarked. There's no sign. You would walk past it without a second look. Inside, it is the nerve centre of jazz. The Rhythm Club is where the musicians go, not to perform exactly, not to be heard by the public, to play for each other, to practice the language of the music in front of the only audience that truly matters, which is the people who also speak it. It's open until 4 in the morning, sometimes 5. It has a bar that serves gin, officially illegal under the Volstead Act, the prohibition law passed in 1919 that banned the manufacture and sale of alcohol, and unofficially the worst-kept secret in the city. The police know. The precinct gets its envelope every week and the gin pours freely. Prohibition, in Harlem, is something that happened to other people. When you walk in at 9 o'clock, the place is already loud. Not yet at the howling pitch it'll reach by midnight, but warm, building, filling. The air is blue with cigarette smoke. The bar is 3 deep. In the back, through a set of heavy curtains, someone is playing piano. You can hear the left hand, big and rolling, reaching down into the bass registers with authority. You make your way through the crowd. Nod to people you know, which is more people than it was 11 months ago. A bassist named Solomon from Philadelphia who you've played with twice. A trumpet player named Earl, who is your main competition, and also your closest friend, which is the only kind of competition worth having. A woman named Gladys, who sings, and whose voice is the kind of thing that makes you reconsider your whole understanding of what music is supposed to do. Gladys, you say. She looks at you, not warmly. Gladys is economical with warmth until she respects you, and she respects you based entirely on what you do with your instrument. This is correct and fair. You got something for tonight? She asks. I've been working on a thing. She waits. It starts in the high register, you say, and comes down, like a question being asked and then answered differently than you expected. She considers this. Play it and we'll see. Through the curtain. The back room is small. A piano, a drum kit, a few chairs, the accumulated smell of decades of concentrated music. The man at the piano is Art Tatum. You've heard him, but never seen him this close. He's 21 years old, practically blind, and the most technically accomplished pianist alive. He plays with a delicacy and complexity that makes other musicians stop what they're doing and just listen, which is what you do now, standing in the doorway, holding your trumpet case, watching his hands. He finishes a passage, hangs a chord in the air, and the silence after it is almost physical. Well, Tatum says, without looking up from the keys. You going to stand there or you going to play? You play. That's the only way to describe it. You've been playing since you were 9 years old. Your father handed you a cornet with a stuck valve and said figure it out, and you did, and you've been figuring it out ever since. 14 years of playing every hour you weren't working or sleeping. 14 years of listening to anyone better than you and taking everything they would give you and adding it to what you already had. Tonight, something is different. Maybe it's Art Tatum on the piano behind you, pushing and pulling the harmonic structure of every phrase in ways that demand you respond in kind. Maybe it's Gladys, who came in and started singing against your melody, weaving through it like water through reeds. Maybe it's just the accumulated weight of 11 months in Harlem, all the music you've heard, all the poverty and glory and frustration and beauty of this neighborhood that has become your world. Whatever it is, when you play tonight, it's better than you've been before. You can feel it while it's happening, which is rare. Usually you only know after, when someone tells you, or when you hear the echo of it inside your own chest for the rest of the night. But tonight, you know while your lips are on the mouthpiece and your fingers are moving, and the sound is coming out of the bell of the King Super 20, like it has been waiting in there for years, just waiting for this particular room, this particular moment. You play for 2 hours, maybe more. You lose track. That happens sometimes. When you finally lower the horn, the back room is full of people who came to hear the noise and then stayed. Earl is there, nodding slowly. Solomon has his bass and adds a low hum of approval. Even Tatum, who is not generous with compliments, plays a little answering phrase that says, in the language musicians use when words aren't precise enough, yes, that. Gladys just looks at you. She doesn't say anything. She doesn't have to. At midnight, someone in the crowd suggests moving to the Cotton Club. You don't go. The Cotton Club is 3 blocks away at 142nd Street and Lenox Avenue. It's the most famous nightclub in Harlem, possibly in America. Duke Ellington has his orchestra there every night. Cab Calloway will be there in a few years. The music is extraordinary. The floor show is spectacular, and it's whites only, not the performers. The performers are Negro. But the audience, the tables, the chairs, the drinks, the experience of being a patron, that's reserved for white people who come uptown from downtown to hear black music performed by black artists in a black neighborhood while not speaking to any actual black residents. The Cotton Club has a seating capacity of 700. Every seat is filled with white faces 5 nights a week. The musicians make good money there, better money than you make at the Rhythm Club. Nobody in Harlem talks about the Cotton Club without the conversation becoming complicated within about 30 seconds. You stay at the Rhythm Club. By 1 in the morning, you've moved twice. The Rhythm Club to a speakeasy on 131st Street that doesn't have a name on the door and where the gin is cut with something that might be rubbing alcohol, and you drink exactly 1 glass of it very slowly. Then to a rent party. Rent parties. You need to understand this institution. Harlem rents are higher than equivalent apartments in white neighborhoods because Harlem landlords know their tenants have limited options. A 2-room apartment that might rent for $8 a month in white Brooklyn can rent for $15 in Harlem. This is legal. This is how American real estate worked in 1926. You either paid it or you lived somewhere worse. When the rent is due and you're short, you throw a party. You hire a musician, or you find one who'll play for a cut of the door. You charge 25 cents admission. You cook food and charge for it. Pig's feet, chitlins, potato salad, pots of red beans and rice. You charge a nickel for a plate. You stay up until 3, 4 in the morning. You count what came in. Sometimes you make your rent, sometimes you make half. Sometimes, if you're lucky and the music is good and the word got out, you make rent and next month's rent and enough to send something to your mother. Tonight's rent party is in a 4th-floor apartment on 133rd Street. The musician is a pianist named Booker who plays stride piano the way locomotives move, the left hand jumping octave bass patterns while the right hand runs through melodies so fast they seem impossible. 30 people in a space designed for 10. The heat is extreme. The food is on a table in the kitchen. Someone has strung a string of electric bulbs across the living room ceiling, and the light they give is yellow and warm, and the whole apartment glows like something interior, like an idea of warmth made literal. You play 2 songs when Booker takes a break. Your trumpet is welcome everywhere. Afterward, a woman asks your name. She's from South Carolina, she tells you. Been here 4 years. Works in the garment district down in the 30s, sewing buttonholes. Same as it was at home, she says. Different city, same work. But different how, you ask. She thinks about this. At home, she says, when I walked down the street, I was walking in someone else's world. Her words are careful. Here, when I walk down 125th Street, it's complicated. Some of those stores, you know they don't want us there. But the street itself, the block, this building. She gestures at the apartment, at the party, at the 30 people packed into the small space, eating and talking and listening to music at 1 in the morning. This is ours. Nobody gave it to us. We built it. And they cannot take that. You think about this for a long time afterward. 3 in the morning. The streets of Harlem are still inhabited, not wildly, not at the peak they hit around midnight, but people are out. A couple walking arm in arm, a group of men coming off a late shift at the hotel, a woman in a fur coat who got out of a taxi and is now trying to find her keys in her bag under the orange glow of a street lamp. You walk home slowly. You're carrying the trumpet case, and you're tired in the particular pleasurable way that follows good performance, the exhaustion that comes from having actually used something, from having wrung something real out of yourself. Your legs are heavy, but your mind is light. The two conditions that, combined, mean you're going to sleep deeply and well. 133rd Street. The brownstones look soft in the pre-dawn. The fire escapes make lacework patterns against the grey sky. Somewhere, a window is open and someone inside is still playing music, not performing, playing for themselves in the dark, in the early morning hours when only the truest need survives. You stop and listen for a moment. The notes drift down to the street. Somebody's learning, you think. That's all practice really is. Learning the language slowly, privately, measure by measure. 271 West 133rd Street. 4 flights. The stairs of this building are covered in linoleum the colour of old mustard that someone installed in perhaps 1910, and that has been worn through to the wood in the centre of each step. You know each step. You know which ones creak and which ones don't, and you climb quietly, out of courtesy to the people sleeping behind every door. 3rd floor. The Jenkinses, who have 4 children and are from Alabama. The oldest girl, maybe 11, has recently begun to play violin, and you can sometimes hear her practicing in the evenings, hesitant and earnest and painful in the way early attempts always are. 4th floor. Your apartment. The door that sticks slightly in the summer heat when the wood expands. You ease it open. Ease it closed. Clarence is asleep. Raymond isn't back yet. The apartment is quiet in the way apartments are quiet at 3 in the morning when the building has settled and the street has found its overnight register and nothing is asking anything of you. You unwrap the trumpet, you hold it for a moment. There were people from Columbia Records there tonight. Maybe, you don't know. Earl said he saw them. Maybe they were. Maybe they'll call. Maybe nothing comes of it. And in 6 months you're still pressing suits and playing the rhythm club on weekends and saving money and sending some home, and that's a life too. That's a perfectly good life. You've been in worse places than this. You've been in a place where the question wasn't whether you'd succeed, but whether you'd survive. This place, this complicated, expensive, beautiful, infuriating, magnificent city, this place at least asks the more interesting question. You set the trumpet down. You lie down on the cot. Outside, 133rd Street makes its quiet sounds. A car. The distant clatter of something in an alley. The breath of the building around you. The pipes and the walls and the floors that have held 30 years of tenants. 30 years of people laying down their burdens for the night and trying to sleep. You think about Art Tatum's left hand. The way it moved. The authority of it. The knowledge. You think about what the woman from South Carolina said. This is ours. We built it. You think about the tree of hope with its bark worn smooth. You think about the train from Mississippi. The red clay fields seen through a smudged window. The feeling of crossing from one world to another and not knowing yet whether the new world would hold you. It held you. 11 months. You're still here. You're more here than you were. Every week you are more yourself in this city, more fluent in it, more able to navigate its demands and extract from it what you came for. Tomorrow you'll wake before dawn. You'll press suits and listen to Braxton's histories. You'll walk the streets and touch the tree of hope. You'll play music. You'll survive. But tonight you played well. You played in front of Art Tatum and Gladys, whose respect is worth more than most contracts. You ate good food at a rent party in someone's warm apartment, and you had a conversation that you'll still be thinking about in 10 years. You walked home at 3 in the morning through a neighborhood that is unlike anywhere else on earth. A neighborhood that was built, specifically and deliberately, out of the determination of people who were told they couldn't, and who did it anyway. That's Harlem. That's where you live. The sounds of the city grow quieter. Or maybe you're just listening less. Warm enough. Fed enough. Safe enough. Heard tonight. That's more than enough. That's everything. The King Super 20 sits in its cloth wrap on the floor beside you, 2 feet away in the dark, the instrument that cost you 14 months of sawmill wages and that has already begun, in the 11 months since you brought it to this city, to make the journey worth it. The music is in there, in the trumpet, in the brass, in the shaped air of the bell. And it will be there tomorrow, and the day after, all the mornings you have left. Sleep takes you the way sleep takes musicians, not all at once, in phrases, like a song ending, measure by measure, until the last note hangs in the air and then dissolves, and there's nothing left but silence and the sound of a city that never quite stops. Close your eyes. The streets of Harlem run on without you. The musicians play through the night. The rent parties count their money. The milkman rattles his cart over the cobblestones of Lenox Avenue. The woman from South Carolina sleeps in her apartment, and tomorrow she'll walk down a street that is hers, that she built, that cannot be taken. And you sleep in a narrow cot in a room with 2 other men in a building on 133rd Street, in the most extraordinary neighborhood in the world, in the most extraordinary city in the world, in a year when everything is being invented by people who don't know yet that they're making history. You don't know it yet either. You just know tonight was good. That's enough. Good night. Centuries will pass. The Harlem you know will change beyond recognition. The brownstones will be bought and sold and renovated and sold again. The Rhythm Club will close. The Cotton Club will close. The Tree of Hope will be cut down when 7th Avenue is widened, though someone will save a piece of it. And it's kept somewhere, even now. The rent parties will become legend. The music will conquer the world. Jazz will become the American art form, exported to every country that has ears. The musicians you played beside tonight will have their names in history books in 100 years. And ordinary people, people like you, people who pressed suits by day and played trumpet at night and sent money home and figured out the city 1 block at a time, they'll be the ones who made it all possible. The foundation nobody sees, underneath the monument everyone admires. Sleep now. Tomorrow is still coming. But tonight, you already lived something worth remembering.